Hi everyone, and thanks for joining our session today, which is entitled Employee Owned, What Next? I'm Kingsley and I'm one of the previous owner-managers of Emperor and now a minority shareholder since we became employee owned.
And I'm Sam, I'm a communications consultant at Emperor. I've been at Emperor for about 4 years and I'm also a member of our employee board.
And Emperor is a creative strategic communications agency. It was founded in 1996 by my two partners, Steve and Noel. I joined a couple of years later and we've grown to be around 22 million in revenue, 250 people. We transitioned to employee ownership in January 2020 when we sold 2/3 of the business to an employee ownership trust. And we're going to be talking today a bit about our experiences of being an employee-owned business to date, how employee ownership is, we believe, powering our business forward, some of the lessons we've learned around employee ownership, and some of the aspirations we have for the future. And hopefully, Sam and I will have quite different perspectives, but hopefully the combination of those will be useful for some of you who are starting out on this journey or about to start out on this journey. So Sam, first thing I'd like to ask you is that if we go back to 20th of January 2020 when we made the announcement, what was your initial reaction?
It was really exciting. So we had a company update in London. Obviously everyone from all the different offices came down. And yeah, I think, when Steve made the announcement, it was just clear that it was going to be such a positive, but also a really big milestone for Emperor and for the founders. I think as well as it feeling very exciting, there was some uncertainty. Employee ownership is quite complex, I think, to get your head around in terms of the transaction and the details. And for most people at Emperor, it was probably quite new. So a bit of uncertainty in terms of what it meant in practice, but very exciting. And how about for you? It must have been a big day announcing it to everyone.
Yeah, it was a slightly surreal experience, I guess. We've obviously been working on it for a number of months, but there were relatively few people in the senior management team that knew about what was going to happen. So it was actually really nice to get it out there, and obviously the reaction was really positive, which was fantastic. And I think importantly for us, it felt like the beginning of something rather than the end, and that was really how we wanted it to feel. So immediately after the announcement, I guess I felt this palpable sense of what next. There were some practical things to get busy with, like the formation of the employee board and the external communications to our clients and our other stakeholders. But there was a real feeling, I think, amongst us around, so what's different? What actually happens now? And then, of course, this was January 2020. So March 2020, we entered lockdown. And obviously, I guess our focus went off of embedding employee ownership into the business and a bit more into the pressing issues of the time. And there were some decisions we had to take very quickly and I think decisively. And I think in hindsight, whilst they were good decisions that we took, we didn't really consult with our partners perhaps in the way that we should have done. It didn't come natural to us at that point. I don't know what you think about that, Sam, how you felt about that at the time, perhaps.
Yeah, I think, as you said, it was new to everyone in terms of employee ownership. The employee board was just getting established. And, at that time during the pandemic, quick decisions had to be made. And yes, we felt that potentially the EB should have been consulted, but it was already new. And equally, we were finding our feet in terms of how we should respond and support when strategic decisions had to be made. So I think now that we've got all the right mechanisms in place, we know sort of how we fit together, that absolutely, I'm sure you would consult with the EB now, as you're doing with other decisions.
Yeah, and I think whilst we didn't consult, I think those decisions were influenced by being employee owned. So there was a sense of actually we're all in this together, and there's if we're going to take some pain, we should share the pain equally. So I feel that, but perhaps the consultation process wasn't as good as it could have been.
Yeah, and thinking about becoming employee owned, I think everyone at Emperor thought you would anyway, but it gives more confidence that, you were going to put the partners first, and then thinking about how you kept everyone up to date in terms of financials, thinking about different scenarios and what the implications would be. I think the transparency and frequency of those from you definitely went up as a result of us being employee owned.
Yeah, I think we felt that. We felt more obliged for the communication to be clear, to map out some of the different scenarios of how this could unfold, both financially, but in operationally as well. And I think perhaps in the past, before employee ownership, we might have tried to not hide, but not be completely transparent about some of those things, so as not to worry people. But I think we were much more open as a result of the status we then had. I think now the governance structure is so much better established. So the presence of the employee board on the executive committee provides that two-way communication, which is actually working really well. And the fact that the chair of the employee board is now an observer on our main board, again, I think that's making that channel much more formal and actually much better established. And that's been something that's really, really come out of the last perhaps 6 months, really. We've got that right. So in many ways, I don't think it's overstating it to say that the business is really now powering ahead. I'm sure you'd agree, Sam. And I think that's in one area that's business performance. So we're trading really well, and it's difficult to say how much of that we can attribute to being employee owned. It feels to me like we should attribute some of that success, but I don't know what you feel about that, Sam.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think, as you said, we've always wanted to deliver the best for our clients, but now, financially we very much share in the success of the business in terms of partner dividend, which is just one aspect of employee owned, but ultimately I think it makes everyone a bit more commercially minded. The teams that perhaps don't necessarily get involved in that aspect of Emperor now have a much better understanding of it and are kept up to date around it. So yeah, I think it definitely has made a difference.
Yeah, good. I think one of the areas where I can definitely say there's a difference is with sort of internal change initiatives. So there's been a lot of challenges that we've had to deal with as a business that most businesses deal with. So things like diversity and inclusion, and thinking about our responsibilities to our wider stakeholder group. And I think previously we would have had projects set up, sort of led by the management team. We've got some people involved, but they would have been very much, led by management. Whereas I feel now that we are able to sort of seed initiatives, and then people are taking up the mantle and really driving them forward. So around diversity and inclusion, people are going and sourcing speakers and coming up with sessions that we can run actually off their own back, and it's actually become much more sort of organic growth those initiatives are having. Is that how you see it?
Yeah, I think so. And I think some of the forums we have in place now, whether it's drop-in sessions, voice sessions, it allows partners to have those discussions. It facilitates discussions between the different offices so that people can take more responsibility and ownership of some of these projects. And thinking about B Corp as well, and the fact that we're working towards becoming B Corp certified. There's so much work and so many different work streams around that. And actually loads of partners from across the business are running some of those work streams as we're all working towards becoming B Corp.
Yeah. And I think another area where we are really up and running now and actually starting to see the results is in the succession planning. Now, I think this is one of the big benefits we've seen through employee ownership, the ability for us to plan succession in a controlled way. And certainly when there's 3 previous owners of the business who might have slightly different views on the future, how much they want to be involved in the roles they want to play, the succession process is actually one that can suit everyone. And I think one of the things we learned was that actually this is not a process that any of us have been through before. So engaging our non-executive chairman and getting some external consultant in to help that process has really been beneficial. So actually the discipline around defining the process, defining the roles, because that's not actually as straightforward as perhaps you think, because owner managers tend to fill voids and have roles which kind of spool across lots of different areas. And I think defining those roles is actually quite difficult. It's not necessarily direct replacements, But then actually going out and benchmarking those roles, looking at potential candidates, internal and external, and making the decisions. We've really had the time to do that in a controlled way, and I think importantly consult with the partners.
Yeah.
So you've been part of that, Sam, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you guys came to the employee board about the succession plan, obviously you ran through the process, the potential candidates, and that's a really unique feature, I think, of employee ownership. And ultimately at that stage, for the employee board, our role really is to pose questions back to you guys, to, start to think about what the different partners may be upon, hearing some of this news and thinking about some of these decisions. So yeah, really unique and really interesting from an EB perspective.
Yeah, and I think obviously we're not quite there yet, and there's more stages to go through. But I think now the process has been robust, and if we get the onboarding and the offboarding of us from our previous roles right, then there's a real great that will be a really successful process that we've run.
So looking ahead in terms of the first 2 years, what are our future aspirations? I think all of employee ownership pretty much, bar the first month and a half, really has been from home. It's been during lockdowns, it's been during the pandemic. So it'll be really interesting and I think quite exciting as we start to come back into the office more, thinking about, the employee voice sessions that we have, how do they work when you've got some people in the office and some people at home, because actually they've worked really well virtually. We have people from across so many different offices and they can all join the same forum. So I hope that they continue to work as well as they have done, especially over the last 6 months. We've really been getting into a rhythm with them. So I think that's one aspect. Also the fact that we're growing so rapidly, there's lots of new joiners, so making sure they're onboarded and educated about employee ownership in the same way as we were, to really get them engaged. And I think lastly, the first 2-year term for the employee board is coming to a close now, which is a bit sad, but we've got the election process underway. And so again, just really exciting to see how the new board members take the employee board and what we've done so far to the next level.
I think from my perspective, I think we've got the employee voice quite well established in the governance structure. I'd really like to see the employee voice now actually being more a platform for driving innovation. We've got some great people who are really talented experts in their fields. And I think we've got to create the environment where they bring ideas that can really power the business forward. I don't think we've got that quite right yet. There's still some work to do there. I think another area is actually how we use employee ownership as a tool effectively in the talent market. As you said, we're recruiting rapidly and it's a very difficult market for talent in our industry. And I'm not sure at the moment we quite articulate employee ownership in a way that makes it as powerful as it could be. And we're doing a lot of work in that area, and it's one of the things we do as an agency, and we call it our partner value proposition, and it's almost ready to be launched. I'm quite excited about it, but getting that right, I think, will be a big difference for us going forward. And then I think finally, that succession process, as I say, it's been a robust process, but we've got to see it right the way through, which will be probably significantly beyond actually the roles being filled, to make sure those people are supported and mentored, and actually making sure that the previous owners step back and stick to their lanes, and provide the space for those new leaders to take the business forward.
So, lessons learned. What have we learned over the last 2 years? I think I said it already, but it takes time. The EB definitely is still learning, evolving. And I think one of the key things from the engagement piece and how we speak with partners and how partners, we're all able to share our thoughts and ideas, to keep everyone feeling engaged and empowered, the feedback loop's really important. So when we have these voice sessions, partners share so many interesting ideas and, we report them back to ETSCO, we discuss them with you. But if the partners don't see how those ideas have then fed into decisions that have been made or new initiatives, it's really hard, I think, to keep people feeling positive and empowered about the fact that they can do that. So that's definitely one key learning. I think being proactive, and you've touched on this with innovation, but recognising it's not just going back to you guys with a long list of things that we feel need to change or aren't working quite right. It's actually we take ownership and accountability as partners in the business and come up with solutions to some of those challenges. Lastly, again, thinking about how Exco come and engage with the employee board, actually doing it in quite, the early stages of programs being started or when making a decision, so that we can really have an input into what's happening at the business. And that's working really well. We've always got such a long list now of people wanting to join the monthly EB sessions to discuss new initiatives. So yeah, that's
good. Well, I think from my perspective, I've made a quite big long list here of lessons that we've learned. I think one of them is, I think as previous owners of the business, there's an element of unlearning some of the decision making processes you used to use, and that's not easy actually. I think we've made great strides in that, but it's something I think that owners need to be really, really conscious about. I think the way we think about communications now of financial performance, but also strategy, is not so much about it's a nice thing to do, but actually the partners are entitled to it. So we need to do it really well. We need to be really transparent, and actually we need to be prepared for it to be scrutinised and challenged in a way that perhaps we didn't previously. I think we've learned that internal change initiatives can actually happen much quicker and be much more effective when powered by employee owners. I think we've got enough evidence to see that. You touched on the employee bonus, what we call our partner dividend. Now, I think the learning point about that for us is that we need to manage that over time, and I think increasingly we need to think about it as a listed company would think about its dividend. There shouldn't be any surprises. It shouldn't be at the end of the year there's some surprise about what the dividend is, and it should be managed to be consistent. So that's something else that's I think a learning point for us. We talked about succession, and I think the learnings we've had around succession are it's not an entirely straightforward process. It needs real thought and probably some external help to get it right. When it comes to recruitment and the talent market, I think we're in no doubt the employee ownership can be really powerful, but it doesn't just happen. You've got to be able to articulate it really clearly and effectively in the talent market. I think we're seeing that actually being employee owned means that we can balance our financial objectives with being a more responsible business a bit easier. And I'd say perhaps a lot easier than being if we were private equity owned or if we were chasing a trade sale and there was a lot of focus on financial performance. So I think that's something we've learned. And then finally, I'd say, and you work a lot with clients, Sam, clients love it.
Yeah.
Right? So people are interested in it. They think it's a good story and they like talking about it with us. So I hope that's been useful, hearing a bit about our experiences as an employee-owned business to date. Sam and I are going to be taking questions afterwards, and we'll also be in the networking room. So please, we'd be more than happy to take any questions about anything we've said, but also any other aspects of employee ownership perhaps we haven't covered. Thank you.